In a small village, where time seemed to move slower and the houses spread across the countryside like a painting, there was a man who, to many, was more than just a painter. Tomás didn't just create paintings, he transformed pain into colors, emptiness into shapes. But there was something he had yet to paint: love. The love he kept secret, following him like a shadow. Everything changed when Clara appeared. She wasn't just a young woman seeking inspiration. She was the key for Tomás to finally see what he had been searching for all along. What he didn't know was that this encounter would bring more than a chance to rediscover lost love. He would finally understand that the love he had dreamed of was much closer than he ever imagined. Now get ready for this emotional story. But before we begin, take a moment to check if you're subscribed to the channel, because in the upcoming videos, we'll have even more stories that will touch your heart. Tomás lived in his small house at the center of the village, surrounded by unfinished canvases and worn-out brushes. His world revolved around capturing the simple beauties around him: the sunlight on the fields, the movement of the trees in the wind, and the faces of ordinary people. But no matter how deeply he immersed himself in his art, something was still missing. He couldn't help it. Since his youth, an unspoken love had consumed him. Helena, the woman he had never had the courage to pursue, left to follow her own dreams, leaving Tomás with a silent pain that he could only express through his paintings. Then, Clara arrived in the village. She was looking for something simple, something genuine, and when she saw Tomás's paintings, she felt an instant connection to his art. She decided to seek him out, not only to learn about painting, but to uncover the secret behind his silent canvases. What she didn't know was that, by doing so, she would forever change the fate of both. Clara was not like the other people who passed through the village. She wasn't interested only in the landscape or the tranquility of the place. Her gaze was deeper, more attuned to the details that, for many, would go unnoticed. When she saw Tomás's paintings for the first time, something inside her lit up. The canvases weren't just representations of nature or familiar faces. They told silent stories, stories of pain, loss, and forgotten hopes. Clara, with her keen eye, immediately knew there was something more. Something he wasn't saying in words, but which was there, immortalized in every brushstroke. The next day, she decided to seek him out. Tomás's house was simple, like him, but there was something enchanting in the way he maintained everything around him. A garden with flowers that seemed to have been carefully chosen and arranged, even though in a natural way. He wasn't expecting anyone, so he was surprised to see the young woman at the door, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and admiration. Clara was nervous, but the need to understand more about this man, about his art, made her heart beat faster. "You're the painter from the square, aren't you?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with enthusiasm. Tomás looked at her with a surprised expression, but soon smiled shyly. "Yes, it's me," he replied. "Do you like what you saw? I'm not exactly sure what I felt, but your paintings, they seem to speak of something more," Clara said, hesitating. "I'm not just talking about the colors or the shapes, but about the feeling behind all of it. I want to understand what you're trying to express." Tomás felt a mixture of discomfort and curiosity. Why would a stranger care so much about his paintings? He had always taken refuge in silence, hiding his emotions in the act of painting. But there was something in the way she spoke, something genuine, that made him want to open a door he had kept locked for so long. "I'm not good with words," he said, lowering his gaze, "but I can show you what I know." And that's how Clara became his apprentice. In the first days, she silently watched him paint with admiration. It was fascinating to see Tomás at work, as if each brushstroke was a confession, each color a memory. He never spoke much, but Clara could sense that there was something much deeper there. His paintings weren't just portraits of what he saw, but of what he felt, and behind that, there was an untold story. Determined, Clara decided to try and make Tomás speak. She began asking questions about his works, about the things he portrayed, and over the days she noticed that he was starting to open up, albeit slowly. He spoke about the simplicity of life, about the beauty of the little things that so many people ignored. But he never touched on the subject Clara truly wanted to understand what made him paint with such intensity and melancholy. Then one day, while they were working in the studio, Clara found something that left her speechless. She was organizing some canvases, and in the back of a dark corner of the studio, saw a painting covered by a sheet. Curious, she went over and carefully removed the cover. What she found was an unfinished portrait of a young woman with eyes glowing with life, a wide smile, and delicate hands. Clara stood watching, intrigued by the beauty of the painting, but at the same time felt an inexplicable pain seeing the image so incomplete. She called Tomás, and when he saw her standing before the painting, he turned pale. The expression on his face changed, as if a distant memory had returned abruptly. He approached the canvas slowly, his gaze fixed on the image as though he were seeing something far beyond the painting. For a long moment, neither of them said a word. The silence was heavy, and Clara, eager to understand, decided to ask. "Who is she?" she asked softly, though she already knew deep down that the woman in the painting was important to Tomás. He took a deep breath before finally speaking. "Her name is Helena," he said in a low voice, almost as if fearing the weight of the words. "She was the great love of my life. I never told her that. When we were young, she had to leave to follow her own dreams. I didn't have the courage to fight for her. And when she left, I stayed here, with the feeling that I had lost something I could never get back." Clara fell silent, her heart aching with the pain he had kept for so long. She knew that Tomás's lost love was the root of many of his feelings and ultimately his art. But at the same time, something inside her stirred. The unfinished painting, the lack of words, everything seemed to point to something Tomás still couldn't see. Love didn't have to be lost forever. There was a chance he could rediscover it. "Why didn't you finish the portrait?" Clara asked, trying not to be intrusive, but feeling the urgency to understand the situation. "Because she's gone, Clara," Tomás replied with a sad smile. "And at the same time, she's always been here, in every brushstroke I made, in every color I chose." But Clara, touched by the pain and beauty of the moment, looked at the painting and firmly said, "Maybe you need to finish this painting to heal the pain, to find peace, and perhaps to find what you lost." It was then that something changed. What began as a simple painting lesson turned into something deeper, more emotional. Clara was no longer just learning from Tomás about art. She was helping him confront his own past, deal with the love that was never lived, rediscover what he had lost, and perhaps find something even more precious in the process. But there was more to come. And Tomás, unknowingly, was about to realize that the key to his own heart was much closer than he had ever imagined. The story is getting more and more exciting, isn't it? Let us know in the comments what you think so far. And don't worry, don't go anywhere, there's still so much more to come. After the quiet conversation about Helena's portrait, Clara found herself more involved with Tomás than she had ever imagined. She knew that the painting was more than just an unfinished work. It symbolized all the choices Tomás had made over the years, all the words he hadn't had the courage to say, and all the opportunities he had let slip away. But she also knew that he couldn't continue living with that weight, that unresolved pain. Somehow, the unfinished painting seemed to represent not only Tomás's lost love, but his entire life unfinished, without the true expression of what he felt. Clara found herself consumed by a desire to help him finish this story. She didn't know what more she could do to help, but she felt that, by his side, it would be possible to rediscover what he had lost. Little by little, she became more than just a student. She became a friend, a confidante, and, without either of them realizing, something more was beginning to bloom between them. The time they spent together, observing the world around them and sharing moments of silence and creation, was bringing them closer in a deep and unexpected way. Tomás, in turn, began to feel something new. When Clara looked at him, it wasn't just as a disciple, but with eyes that understood him in a way he hadn't experienced before. She accepted him the way he was, without haste, without judgment. And he, in turn, began to feel something he had never allowed himself to feel before. Hope. Hope that perhaps it was possible to find a new chance, a new way to start over, not just with the painting, but with the feelings he had held for so long. Every day they spent together seemed more natural, as if the universe were conspiring to make it happen. Clara taught him to observe with more attention, to capture the beauty of the little things he had once overlooked. She made him see life with more lightness, without so much pain and regret. It was as though in some way she was painting her own canvas, a canvas he had long since given up on. He taught her about brushes, colors, and shapes, but in reality, she was teaching him something much deeper: how to let go of the pain, how to free himself from the past, and maybe how to accept what was still to come. One afternoon, as they were painting together in the studio, Clara, unsure of what motivated her, asked, "Tomás, do you think love is something we should search for all the time? Or do you think love really finds us at the right moment, in the right way?" He remained silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on the canvas in front of him, but his thoughts drifting to a distant place, to Helena, to the love he never had the courage to live. Finally, he replied with a melancholic smile, "I used to believe that love was something we should search for, that we needed to fight for it. But maybe love isn't something we actively seek. Maybe true love is the one that finds us without us doing anything to deserve it. True love isn't forced, it isn't planned, it just happens when we least expect it. I lost that once, and now, I don't know if I'll find it again." Tomás's words echoed in Clara's heart, but at the same time, something in her wanted to disagree. She knew love wasn't something that simply appeared and disappeared. Love was something that needed to be cultivated, cared for, and nourished. And she was starting to realize that the love Tomás thought he had lost forever might still be there, hidden in the small actions of everyday life, in the shared laughter, in the exchanged glances, in the silent conversations between brushstrokes. But Clara knew she couldn't force anything. She didn't want to be the woman who replaced Helena, or the one who healed all of Tomás's wounds. She just wanted to be there beside him, to support him in his quest for healing, for self-awareness, for peace. And little by little, she began to realize that the connection growing between them wasn't just a search for lost love, but also a way of rediscovering the beauty of life and the people around them. One late afternoon, as the sun set and bathed the studio walls in a golden light, Clara asked Tomás to return to working on Helena's portrait. He looked at her with a mixture of hesitation and insecurity. The painting was almost finished, but he still hesitated to complete it. He feared that, by finishing the painting, he would be closing a chapter of his life once and for all. But Clara encouraged him with a soft smile, one that conveyed confidence and a serenity he couldn't ignore. "Let's finish it together," Clara said, her voice firm and warm. "It doesn't have to be a goodbye, Tomás. It can be a new beginning." It was then that he understood. He didn't need to finish Helena's portrait to say goodbye to the past. He needed to do it to honor what he had lived, to understand that the pain was also part of who he was, but it didn't have to define him. The painting, after all, wasn't just about Helena. It was about him, too, about the man he had become over the years, and the man he still could be. With a deep breath, Tomás took the brush and made the final stroke. When he looked at the canvas, he saw not just Helena's face, but also Clara's face reflected in the colors, in the shapes. Something between them had changed, something he could no longer ignore. It was as if he had finally allowed love to enter his life again, in a new, unexpected, yet completely true way. Tomás felt a lump in his throat, but also a sense of relief, as if the weight of so many years of silence and regret was finally being lifted. Clara looked at him with a smile, and for the first time, Tomás smiled back, not with sadness, but with a peace he thought he would never feel again. He knew, in that moment, that love wasn't something lost. Love was right there, in the simple things, in the act of painting, in the silent companionship between them. And more importantly, he knew that love would no longer have to be hidden. It no longer had to be a secret. Love, now, would be something he would share freely with whomever he wished, fully and truly. And with that, Helena's portrait was complete. But looking at it, Tomás no longer saw just the face of the woman he had lost. He saw, too, the love he could still live. I'm glad you're enjoying this beautiful story, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't liked the video yet. It's really important for YouTube to keep recommending our content so we can keep bringing more emotional stories like this one. So, don't wait. Hit that like button now and help our community grow. Thanks. The day Tomás finished the portrait was marked by a quiet peace. But inside, his heart was in turmoil, emotions he didn't know how to process. Looking at the completed painting, he no longer saw just Helena. He saw the reflection of everything he had left behind. Unfulfilled dreams, unsaid words, and love never lived. Yet something had changed. The portrait no longer held him to the past, but freed him. He finally felt he could move forward. Then Clara, noticing Tomás's transformation, looked at him with an expression that reflected both tenderness and a stillness he had never seen before. She didn't know what to say, but her eyes spoke everything he needed to hear. In that moment, a sense of understanding enveloped them, as if time and words were unnecessary for them to connect. Tomás turned to Clara, and the silence that once separated them now drew them closer in an even deeper way. She stood before him, not merely as a student, but as someone he had learned to value in a way he hadn't felt before. Clara had touched the depths of his heart without even knowing. She had shown him that love was not an endless search, but a discovery that happened unexpectedly, in the simplest and most subtle moments. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling but firm. "I thought love was something lost to me, something I could never have again. But now I know that love isn't about finding or losing. Love is. It's something we build, something we allow. And for a long time, I didn't allow it to enter." Clara, with tears welling in her eyes, stepped forward. She could feel the sincerity in Tomás's words, sincerity that he was finally sharing with her. Without thinking twice, she took his hand, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I know," she responded softly, but with a confidence that seemed to answer everything he felt. "I've always known." Tomás looked at her, unsure of what to say. Words felt so small to express everything he was feeling, but he no longer needed words. On impulse, he pulled her close, their bodies meeting in an embrace that carried all the unspoken emotions of years of solitude and pain. It was as if that embrace were the final stroke on the canvas he had longed to paint within himself. When they separated, Clara looked at him, and for the first time, he saw her with new eyes. She was no longer just a woman he had met by chance. She was the woman who had shown him the true meaning of love. Not the idealized love or the love from a book, but the real love, the simple love that is born from pure gestures, patience, and understanding. Tomás knew at that moment that his love for Clara didn't need grand declarations or lofty promises. It was a love built, day by day, with small gestures, looks, laughter, and even the silences shared. He also knew that his love for Helena would always be a part of him. But now he understood that life wasn't about living in the past, but about accepting the present and the new opportunities that came. And Clara, with her tenderness and strength, was the opportunity he was ready to embrace. But the climax of the story wasn't just in the embrace, but in the recognition that true healing didn't come from trying to reclaim what was already gone, but from embracing what lies ahead, even if it meant taking a new path. The scar he carried on his chest no longer hurt as it once did. He had found in Clara a form of renewal, a new perspective on life. That night, as the sun set on the horizon, the two of them sat in silence, watching the golden light that filled the studio. Helena's portrait, now complete, was displayed in a corner of the room, but no longer as a symbol of something lost. It now represented Tomás's liberation, the end of a painful cycle, and the beginning of a new chapter. Something he never thought possible. Clara looked at him and said, with a shy smile, "Now you can paint your own story, Tomás, and if you want, I'll be by your side." Tomás smiled. For the first time in many years, he felt free. Free to live, to love, to begin again. Not in a hurry, but with the calm of someone who knows that time is not an enemy, but an ally, to those who allow themselves to discover what really matters. And so the painting was no longer just about Helena. It was about him and Clara. About how together they had learned to see the world with different eyes. Eyes that saw not only what was on the canvas, but what was in their hearts. And in that moment, Tomás knew that, for the first time, he was truly ready to live real love. As the months passed, Tomás and Clara's lives intertwined in ways neither of them had ever imagined. The studio, once silent and filled with memories, now vibrated with laughter, shared brushstrokes, and conversations that lasted until the early hours of the morning. Their love grew in the small things, in afternoons spent painting, long walks through golden fields, and hands intertwined at the end of each day. Clara was no longer just the apprentice. She had become the partner he had longed for, someone who understood his soul and helped him continue painting not just canvases, but his own life. Tomás knew that the past with Helena would always be a part of him, but now he no longer needed to live with the pain of loss. He had found in Clara a new reason to smile, to look to the future with hope. Together, they rebuilt the meaning of simple love, a love that doesn't require grand promises, but flourishes in daily actions, in unconditional support, and in quiet presence. The portrait of Helena, now carefully framed, remained there, but no longer as a symbol of a lost love. It was a reminder of how much Tomás had grown, of the lessons he had learned, and of the opportunities life offers when we're willing to embrace the new. What had started as an impossible love now became part of a larger story. The story of a painter who learned that, no matter how simple, true love is always the greatest masterpiece we can create. And so Tomás and Clara continued to paint together, not just canvases, but a life full of meaning, where love is not lost, but found, built, and renewed, always in the simplest, most delicate things. Their love, at last, was no longer an unfinished painting, but a masterpiece, created each day with every brushstroke, every exchanged glance, and every smile shared. If you were moved by this story of simple and true love, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more heart-touching stories that teach us valuable lessons about life and love. Leave your comment and share it with someone you think will also be touched. And remember, love is found in the simplest things. You just need to know how to look with your heart.